Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make some European 4-in-1 style chainmail. And we're going to start with 4 closed links and 1 open link, which I have here. I'm just using some aluminum jump rings I bought off Amazon, and they're 5/16 of an inch, which is kind of the easiest style to work with based on what I've seen online. And all of them have a cut opening, which makes them a little easier to work with. And I would recommend having 2 pairs of jewelry pliers, and those will have a smooth those are kind of like needle nose pliers, but with a smooth grip, and that'll just prevent some damage to the chainmail rings. I did consider using regular needle nose pliers, because it would kind of give a cool texture to the chainmail after working with it. But I just have these. And so to start, you're going to have the one open one, and you're just going to slide the 4 closed ones onto it. Like that, and then you can close that. Sometimes it's a little difficult to close. You got to get a good grip on it. And that'll be the starting point. So now we'll have this 4 rings on one. And when you lay it out, it'll kind of want to fall into the shape where they'll kind of be going the same direction on the top and bottom. So it'll look the closed ring that is holding all the other rings, the one that you put the 4 rings onto, will go on top, as you can see here, where it's on top on one end, and will go underneath on the other end. And so sometimes it can get like jumbled like this, and so you're just gonna make sure you know how the rings move, because that'll help you in further steps. And the next step is really where that's going to matter a lot. All right, and I just made another one of those groups off camera, and I have another open ring right here. And so you're going to want to lay them out like this, where they're in the same orientation going across. And this part is a little tricky. There's a few ways you can do it wrong. So when I first started, one of the ways I did it wrong was that I laid out the chainmail, when I laid out the links like this. If you can see that, it's so where I just kind of held 2 together and didn't like overlap them. And so that kind of makes it into just a chain, and it doesn't really work as chainmail. It's a lot harder to, and that's a very easy mistake to make. So it takes a little bit to figure out, but once you play with it a little bit, it'll make a lot more sense. And so you're just going to want to make sure they're laid out properly. And sometimes you can just tap it a few times and it'll try to lay out the way it's supposed to. It kind of has like a natural state of falling, and that'll be what you want to work with. So when you have them laid out, you're going to have them like this, and you can try to spread those out a little bit, the exterior chains. And with this new open ring, you're going to want to kind of emulate how that looks, but in between the two. So you're going to want to emulate these middle pieces where it's over on one end and under on the other with this new open chain. So to show you kind of how that looks, I'll do half of it first, and then I'll show you the other half. So sometimes it can be a little annoying to get. So as you saw there, it kind of jumped when I clipped it. But once I line it up, it'll look kind of like that, where it's kind of following that same pattern that was laid out in the first one. So on this side, we're going to want to do the opposite of what we just did here. So you're just going to take this new chain, and if you feel comfortable, you can kind of push this off to the side, this top piece, and just kind of close it like that, because that'll make it a little easier to see what you're doing. And you just want to go underneath. So kind of go in the middle and push it underneath. And then I'll close that. It'll kind of lay, just to give you a little bit of a visual of how it'll look. It'll have like 2 outside pieces, then like 2 inside pieces, and then one that goes through all of them. And I'll just close this up. And now that it's closed up, if you find the pieces on the far ends and pull it, it'll kind of lay out. And what you can see right here is it looks like we made a mistake. Since this middle ring is on top on both sides, which isn't what we want. And this is where knowing how the chainmail moves is really important. So if you take that end bit, so you just hold it like this, the two non-connected pieces, if you pull it, it'll pull it tight and it's a little easier to see. The rings can rotate, so you can kind of shift them through and funnel them through, and that'll rotate how the rings are aligned. So if you do that, I did it on both ends by accident. So let me just do it again on one side. So if you do that on one end, not both, and then lay it out, it will now be in the pattern that you want. So that's kind of how the chainmail is going to look. And you can just continue this for a long time. And I actually have a piece off to the side where I kind of did that on a much larger scale. So it's just that same pattern, and you can do it all the way around. And this is actually a closed chain, which I'll show that project once I have it finished. This will be kind of for a tabard type piece that I'm building. And so it just goes all the way around, and you can just, so laying it out, if you want to make like a ring like this, you'll just have it all laid flat and close it at the end, and then you'll have this ring. And next I'll show you, I'll have another one of these that I'm going to build off camera, and I'll show you how to connect the two in the other dimension, and that'll be how you get a sheet. And then I'll show you an example of a larger sheet that you can make. All right, so now I have another one of these laid out, and so you're going to want to have the two of these once you have two of them in the same orientation, and you can make longer ones as well. It's up to you. I like just kind of like doubling, so kind of squaring it each time. And so you'll want the lower end of the center rings on the left and the upper end on the right, and you'll want that for both of them. You can do it you can also swap it if you would like. It really depends on what you'd like to do. Just for the purposes of what I'm doing, you just want those lined up, those center rings, to be kind of the same orientation on both of those. And I have 3 more open rings, and what I'm basically going to be doing here is the same thing we were doing before, but in between. So our goal is to have a third of these center rings, so those 3 middle rings, we're just going to try to do that right in the middle here. Let me just grab one of these open rings. And so once you have one of the open rings, this is where it's a little more difficult to get, especially when you start getting to bigger pieces. So you just want to have the over under. So you just want to find the second ring and slide that through underneath, and then do the inverse on the other side. So it's laid out kind of like that. And then it's going to go right through the lower ring. Sorry, just try to make it say. And then this last ring, it will go through the underneath side of that. So I know it's a little hard to see, and a lot of it will just be as you practice. It'll make a lot more sense. And just practice moving the rings, especially once you get this first sheet. So then if I can close the ring, and then lay it out again. So sometimes you just gotta tap it and it'll lay out. Once you get to bigger pieces, they lay out much more naturally. So it's a little bit easier. So now, as you can see, that ring kind of matches its counterparts on the top and bottom. And so I'm going to do that 2 more times. And then that'll be the whole sheet. So sometimes it can be a little difficult. You can also do it you can just go straight through and do it on the sides as well, instead of going, though you can do it in a different direction if you find that easier. And this was a part I messed up a lot when I was first learning it. And so watching a few videos helped, but it was a lot of just kind of practicing on my own is what really got it to click for me. So sometimes it's a little hard to get it through. So I think I messed up there. So then you can just lay it back out. It's very easy to retry if you mess up. So if you feel like you've messed up, like I just did, you can just take that ring out and start again. So I always find this second one to be the hardest on these smaller sheets. It's always where I struggle the most. I just struggle to get it to lay properly. And if you've noticed, when I laid it back out again, it actually flipped over to the other side. So you just want to be aware of that, because if I tried to do it the same orientation that I was doing, because it's flipped, it wouldn't work right. So you just have to be aware of that. And if it's easier for you to do it one way, so if you learn it to do it just facing the same direction every time, then you can still flip it over pretty easily and do it that way. My hands aren't the steadiest. Luckily, I'm not a surgeon. But it's not too difficult once you get the hang of it. So this time I got it pretty easily. And then I can close that right up. And once you get that laid out, you'll be able to see it a little better. And now it's just about done. And we just have that last one, which I'll still do on camera, and it's still laid out the same direction. And you might notice that sometimes it doesn't close correctly. So you can always go back and fix those if you want. I'm just gonna leave that for now. It's just kind of like a demo. And normally I find it easier to just use your hands to get the rings in, but you could also use the pliers. If you are good at using the pliers, you can slide them through with the pliers as well, which can make it a little easier to see sometimes. And that one ended up being pretty easy. This is a little more structure, so the further you get along, normally it gets a little easier. Just because the other rings provide a little more structure to keep it from moving in ways you don't want it to. So now we can lay it out, and at this point it'll lay out pretty easily. And it will kind of look like this. And so you just want to pay attention to the exterior rings. So on the sides where they're only connected to one internal ring, that's going to be where they might like flip and not look right. So if you just kind of play around with it, you should be able to get it to work properly. And now I'll show you kind of a bigger sheet that I have. This was just done by using the smaller one, and you can just duplicate it each time and then add more. And once it's this size, it has a lot more structure. So it's a little bit easier to see how it moves, which can make it a little bit easier to learn. This size, the smaller size, still will sometimes look a little weird depending on how it moves, but basically as soon as you get any bigger than this, it'll line up pretty easily. And still the corners are going to be issues where you'll have to flip them to get them to work right sometimes. But other than that, you can kind of expand out from this, just build big sheets if you want, or you can connect these kind of to like the single chains to kind of make more structures as well. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it, and let me know what you think in the comments.